the difference between kind of liberal life and more traditional life.
Hmm.
So I grew up in the West, and so I was able to pursue this academic career and hyperfixate on this. But I'd say that you always do everything to a certain. There's always a price associated with
Hmm.
everything. So I grew up more individualistic, um, and I'm maybe balancing that with family and being family oriented.
Hmm.
And I'm not just saying that as like sometimes people say this at job interviews to say, oh, okay, this person is just a hard worker, let's take him. No, I'm actually saying it because I study this topic of liberalism and traditionalism,
Hmm.
and I very much know that the same things that I see the dangers of, I have become myself those things.
Hmm.
So even though I study, I'll give you an example. So
Hmm.
even though I study Islam so much in these books, um, as far as going to the mosque, I mean, I go for Friday prayer, and that's about it.
Hmm.
I don't have as much spiritual practice as I could have.
Hmm.
Uh, so I've become the very thing that I'm warning against because I grew up in this country. So
Hmm.
I would say that the one thing that I would want to work on is to become a more balanced human being where you value things like family, you value things like spiritual practice, all of these things. So I do think I'm very much a product of this kind of Western liberalism, which has its positives. But I do think that I see in my own self these qualities and traits. So, for example, I'm not the kind of person that's I go to another city and I have a relative there. I'm not the person who's going to call them up on the phone and say,
Hmm.
"How are you
Hi.
doing?"
Okay, okay.
I'll be like,
Okay.
"Oh,
Oh, you
avoid."
look like that. I don't know. I thought you are like that, but I
No,
guess you're not.
I'm avoid, 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 please. The
Okay.
worst thing on the ever for me is a phone call. Like so. These are qualities that I have because I grew up in this way that
Hmm.
I wish I could change because
Hmm.
I do realize that it's you're not a full person if
Hmm.
you don't embrace these kind of things. And this is
That
one of the things
acknowledging is a big thing. So, do you think you can change?
to an extent, I would
Hmm.
say. I think that we're built some way
Hmm.
that it's very hard to change.
Hmm.
So at some point in time, you just have to learn to accept somebody for who they are.
Hmm.
And in marriage, for example, that's
Hmm.
my wife is much more family oriented, much more
Hmm. Hmm.
social than I am.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, I think now, 10 years down the line, she's accepted who I am, and
Hmm.
that is
Hmm.
how he is. So.
Oh, so does she give in, or do you ever also balance with her?
It's always going to be me who gives in, but just
Ah, I have to talk to her now
she might
privately.
say differently. No, I would say that I realize that I need to be more human, and
Mm,
so when
mm,
she tells me that I really need to do something, then I'm
mm,
like, okay,
mm,
all right,
mm.
let's do
That's
that
fine.
thing.
Okay.